2024 is history. It's done. 2025 is here. New me, new year. So I tried to record a video towards the end of 2024. I was still pretty comatose from what I was dealing with around that time. And then recently I made 2 videos, and one of them, I don't have an issue with being vulnerable in a video, but there is a surplus amount of those I'm 25 with no friends webcam videos. So, and that's not to say that those videos aren't worth watching or valuable or informative or whatever. So it's more so I saw very pretty girls making those types of videos, and it rubbed me off the wrong way. So I wouldn't want to make a video like that without having something extremely pointed to say, like a piece of wisdom or something to extrapolate. You know, I mean, those good videos in that genre, they expect you to just extrapolate it on your own, and that's okay. I don't want to do that. And the other video, it sucked, so I'm gonna redo it now, actually. So 2024, it's already the 17th of January. Wow, this month went by pretty quick. I'm already reflecting on 2024 and what I liked and what I didn't like, and there's 2 big takeaways for 2024 for me, and those 2 things are: number 1, it was the worst year of my life. No exaggeration, I'm not kidding. It wasn't just one big thing that happened, it was like several in a sequence. Some of those events were completely unrelated to each other and happened totally independently, but it was unrelentless, and it was exhausting, it was extremely stressful, it took a lot out of me. And the other thing is 2024 was the first year of my life where I really felt like a man proper. I mean, I felt a little bit of that in 2023, but 2024, it was very revelatory for me, and I learned a lot about myself and what it means to be responsible or accountable or whatever. But the issue is that with 2024, it was very hard for me to deal with those things. I had to adapt extremely quickly, and it made me look at my life. You know, I'm still pretty young. Some would say I'm too young to have regrets. I'm too young to be introspective because I don't have a good idea of who I am because I'm so young. There's definitely credence to that. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I do know that compared to other people my age, and also looking at the level of responsibility that people in their early 20s used to have a long time ago, I do feel a bit regressed, for sure. I do feel like I learned things like responsibility very late in my life. I learned humility very late in my life, and I'm not a humble person whatsoever. So I do have some regrets. I have some lamentations, and I thought I would talk a little bit about my upbringing. Maybe some parts or aspects of my childhood aren't relatable. I think that they are, but I don't think that I'm a single case, and I think a lot of what I went through, a lot of other people in my generation can relate to being regressed in a specific way. I grew up in a very busy household. My father was a brilliant man, for sure. He worked in IT, and when he wasn't at the office, he was at home on his computer, and unfortunately, he was just so sucked into that. It really took a toll on him later in his life, and led to a lot of his problems, unfortunately. But He was extremely irritable, pretty much all the time. If I had to go up to him to ask him for something, like I wasn't sure if he would be like, "Oh yeah, sure," or if he'd like freak the hell out. So my mother was she was a bit of a matriarch in the family. My dad was atheist. My mom was Mormon, and it's funny she was even Mormon to begin with because she was the black sheep of her family in a lot of ways. She was into all this alternative stuff, so you know, it's she didn't hold on to it forever. She obviously left the religion. I think in part because of my dad, but there was definitely some tension there, and they were both busy people. I would say a lot of my household was like walking on eggshells. I think it was hard for me to really be vulnerable in any sort of way. I wouldn't say that I was a true introvert because I liked people. I wanted to be around people to some degree. And I think the issue was more so I was so stubborn of a kid. I had a really difficult personality for people that made it very hard for people to want to be around me, and I was extremely argumentative and combative, impulsive, abnormally impulsive, even as a kid, constantly testing people, pushing people's buttons, and like finding it hard to empathize with other kids. And it was an early pattern for me to just act out in really insane ways and get into fights with other kids. So like one of my earliest memories as a kid, there was at lunch, a kid at school was at lunch, a kid was eating a Hostess cupcake and I took it from him and I ate it in front of him. I mean, that might be like regular little kid stuff to an extent, but like I did that way more than probably what a normal boy my age would have done. And there would be these windows where I would be able to make friends and whatnot, but it wouldn't last like too long because I would do something really selfish that would kind of push them away, make them not want to hang out with me, or I would get really mad at them and then I wouldn't want to be friends with them. So very hard to make friends, and I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and I became a sped kid. So and I got into so much trouble in school that it kind of made like a reputation, and I was kind of seen as like trouble, so kids didn't really want to spend time around me. And I picked up on that because when you're not just in the middle of everything that's happening, when you're kind of pushed back in the background, you have more time to think and to reflect. And it made me self-conscious, and it made me embarrassed and really shameful, not in like a meaningful way, but just like I didn't like being seen in that way. So, and I didn't hang out with kids that often outside of school. So I spent a lot of my time growing up, and also my parents were busy all the time. So I was largely raised, I think, by my siblings, and I was into like zillennial media. I was into this like older kid stuff. Since I've been able to talk or read or do anything, I've been on a computer. I've been playing video games really my entire life, and I don't even think that in and of itself was really a bad thing. But and I got put in a behavioral program, so maybe I'll make a video just solely about those experiences. I knew kind of how I looked. I didn't really want to spend time around other kids, and the computer was definitely an escapism for me, because I wasn't really happy with who I was or what I was perceived as in real life. So I spent a lot of time on the computer. I played multiplayer games, and I heard older kids on these games, and I thought that these older kids were really cool. In real life, I learned that, like, for whatever reason, my sensibilities were so divorced from other kids that if I wanted to have like a conventional interaction, I would have to mimic or emulate them, and it very often it came across as very stilted and like stereotypical. So it was awkward. It was extremely awkward. And when I did it online, when I did it on the computer, it was not that way. I actually fit in better. I did get hazed a little bit. I might have gotten cyberbullied or whatever, but my interactions were far more successful, and I found a lot more relatability online. And I realized, like, I didn't actually have to emulate that hard. I don't think the sense of humor spoke to me. The way people wrote, the etiquette. Like the timing, the comedic timing. It was a lot easier for me to kind of grasp, and also the fact that they were older than me. It was really cool, I think. So I enjoyed being online more than talking to kids at school, for sure. One thing led to another. Obviously, I looked up videos and stuff like that. Edits people make, whatever, gaming videos, stuff about the games I like, the anime that I watched with my siblings and stuff online, and I got more into web surfing, and I would go down rabbit holes and look up the definitions of words and discover websites that I really liked. Discovered that there were forums about the video games that I enjoyed, that there were wikis about the games that I liked, and I would absorb just all this info because I didn't have much tethering me down outside of the computer. So that was my main focus, was just playing games, and even a lot of the games that I liked weren't all games that maybe kids at school could get. I really sucked myself into that, and even that isn't necessarily the bad, like, part of like what I want to talk about. Around this time, I became really self-aware as a kid of what my standing with the world was. I started to think more like people. When I have to emulate kind of what other people do, I have to fake maybe reactions to things. I can't think of like an example, but just little social things like that. It made me wonder how much of people's emotions were performative. I saw kind of the cliquey nature of people, and because I was in SPED, I would often find myself in these like clinical environments where I would be questioned, and I saw it as demeaning to have people pry into my brain like that, especially when I would get in trouble, and then I would talk to like a counselor, and she would kind of poke and prod me, and there'd be these sheets and these IEPs, and it made me feel undermined, and or I would talk to a teacher who maybe knew about who I was, but they didn't really know me exactly, and she'd be very patronizing to me, and it aroused, I think, the passions within me. It made me extremely resentful, and while I couldn't consciously think this, or I wouldn't be able to fully articulate it, I came to some sort of conclusion really early in my life, before I should have been maybe able to do that as a kid. and maybe I wasn't ready to handle thinking about things in this way. But the world is full of liars. Every single person is deceptive in some way. The way people succeed in this world is through deception. People are vain. People are self-centered. I had a very... I was already like extremely angsty, and I think absorbing this like older kid stuff online and learning little, getting these little like glimpses of what the full world was in these little ways, like, you know, learning about disparities or politics and like like passing mentions in online conversation. It definitely it sparked something within me, it already like put me on the path basically to become who I am now. Okay, I ate. That's good. So I had this perception of people. It made me very angry, distrustful of people, and I was very woe is me, very angsty about... I wonder how much of it is like hereditary mental illness, but that's just the way I was as a kid, and it didn't help really with like my patterns of misbehavior, the things that would happen after that, like talking to a counselor or being put on meds and stuff like that. So I would sink myself even more into online stuff, and I would search up even more things. And I think Nianners, if you know Nianners, I mean, she went on 4chan when she was like 10 or 11 years old or something like that. I started off pretty young as well, because as a kid I kind of prided myself a little bit on having a dark or edgy sense of humor. I was into like creepypastas and shit. So I found myself on image boards because I was too scared and self-conscious to set up like a Tumblr or anything like that, or like any social media. I didn't have a phone, obviously. And around the time I went to middle school, around like 6th grade, I think stuff really got crazy. The way it works here, or the way it worked, I believe they redid the middle school, but there used to be a 6th grade school, completely separate, and then like a 7th and 8th grade school. And because I was in a behavioral program, I as a 6th grader, they didn't really have the resources for that at the 6th grade school. So as a 6th grader, they put me in the 7th and 8th grade school, and I was the only 6th grader in the 7th and 8th grade school. I was in a resource room, but occasionally I would go into 7th grade classes. So like, for instance, like I took social studies, 7th grade social studies twice. I took it the first time in 6th grade, second time in 7th, right? So when I went in 6th grade into these 7th and 8th grade classes, if I wasn't in a resource room, I looked really small. And keep in mind, I had like restrictive eating, so I looked smaller, and people thought it was funny that I looked like such a little kid, because I probably looked like a 4th grader or something, like a 4th or 5th grader. In a 7th and 8th grade school, I looked so little. I looked even smaller and even younger than like the shortest kids. And so that was extremely lonely. It was so lonely. It felt so like humiliating. By the time I was in 7th grade, I didn't go to the 6th grade school with any of my peers, you know. I was already here. So I was so removed from like what kids my age were doing. I was behind on some of the cultural stuff that they were into, so I had literally nothing to relate to them with. I was going to all my 7th grade classes, except for a language class that would be like a structured study, which is basically like a study hall. So I was a quiet spurg. I wore a is buttoned all the way up, extremely skinny, super quiet, and I had like very autistic body language. And I mean, there were some kids that remembered me from elementary school. In my social studies class, I sat next to a girl named Jaslyn, and she was like a normal girl, and I think she maybe it's not necessarily that she made fun of me or bullied me, but like she knew that I was like a quiet spurg kid. And in middle school, if I had friends in elementary school, I had no friends in middle school whatsoever. All my friends were on the internet, and they were probably like much older than me by like 4 years or 5 years or whatever. So I had no friends in school. I was completely by myself. Nobody would want to talk to me. I was completely weird, and that was extremely hard. And this girl, I sat next to her, and she thought like it would be cool or cute or whatever to have like an autistic pet, because she knew, So I was basically like mute in school. I literally didn't speak to anybody apart from teachers. She would like be like, are you my best friend? And I was so desperate, especially because it was coming from a girl, that would be like, yeah, I am, even though we've never really spoken that much. And she would talk to other girls and be like, this is my, look at Matthew or whatever, he said I'm his best friend or whatever. And I was so mute and so impotent that I couldn't not look like a retard, basically. No offense to the disabled, but that's just how I looked, and I couldn't defend myself, and I knew that I was being played, and I knew that would hurt my chances of even making any friends at all even more. And I let it happen because I was so desperate. And it was around this time I discovered like what an incel was, and I wouldn't really necessarily say I identify with being an incel, but I didn't then, because they were all older. But I related to a lot of aspects of it, and it just solidified that hatred for people, like even more. Even though I craved, I think, like attention and social interaction, it was always really superficial, or it was just straight up negative. And I started to be bullied more around this time, and that would sink me even deeper into the internet. I learned as much about the world as possible with what I knew to look up around that time. I paid a lot of attention to my social studies class, learning about history, and I started to develop opinions about things, opinions about the world, and I learned more about the disparities between people, and I really I started to really just hate everything, and I felt like I was the only one who like knew like what was even happening in the world, like even like as a kid. I became like a red-pilled kid, because I found myself in even wackier spaces with like eccentric people online, and I learned even more about like image board culture and learning about people who are like really reclusive, like hikikomoris, and people into drugs, like psychonaut culture, people doing like psychedelics and DPH, and I got really interested in stuff like that, and I wanted to basically be as self-sufficient as humanly possible and minimize my obligations in real life, and I wanted to be as fully realized at a young age as possible. And it was because I didn't like other people, or rather I didn't like the people that I was around, because I couldn't find anybody like me in school. I got into music. Music also became an increasingly more difficult thing to relate to other kids through, because the music I like became more and more like online, and so that became pretty hard. I was acting out even more around this time, like vandalizing and destroying things and stealing. I got in trouble for bringing a knife to school, like just really bad shit. And like around the time I was in 8th grade, I cut all of my classes. I had a failing grade in every single one of my classes, and I still went to high school, but like I was known for being in the hallway or having my head down in class and stuff, even though I had good grades in 7th grade. So really sucked into the online shit. As a kid, I lacked serious mentorship, and I lacked, like, even if like my dad taught me some cool things, and I'm not shitting on him at all, because he did so much for me, but emotionally, or being, if I had trouble or questions about something, they would never seriously be answered. And a lot of the adults in my life were seriously afflicted by very deep problems that they never treated, and so it would come out in a really ugly way for them when they needed to be strong for other people. And I lacked mentorship, and because I was left to my own devices a lot, I wanted to become my own mentor, and I wanted to surpass other people for extremely selfish reasons, because I felt robbed of like some sort of coat of arms. I felt like I deserved so much more, and I wasn't getting that. And so in the age of technology and the school curriculum kind of sucking, and also just having these experiences where even the social aspect of school couldn't really keep me tethered and productive. I was left to my own devices, and I wanted to become the smartest kid in the world, basically. And not even because I felt like I had something to prove, because I didn't want to prove anything to anybody, because I didn't think that they would even understand or appreciate that, because very, very often, maybe because of prejudice, and also maybe I'm just reading into it too much and being too self-centered, but I feel like with a lot of my achievements, because of my diagnosis, a lot of the feedback I would get from adults would be extremely patronizing, and I was offended by that. So as a kid, I wanted to surpass other people, intellectually and spiritually. I became interested in Gnosticism. I believed in eugenics. I was anti-Semitic. I had like all these, just this concoction of weird beliefs. I wanted to surpass other people with my understanding,
I understood society as this big rat race of personalities, of individuals. And I mean, a lot of the media that was out, even now, a lot of what's popular now reflects that. So that's not really something that just I believe, but I think everybody believes that in some way, even though that's false. And the only way to escape and not be used by other people was to use other people for my own benefit and to transcend the need for society, or else I'm stuck in a prison, and friendships with people are materially beneficial. Otherwise, like, you're being played and you're fooling yourself. Getting a girlfriend is like a meme. It's not something you should do. And it's not even that this is like I had like a rich Andrew Tate hustler thing and I thought I was ever going to be shit. But it's more so like I just, even in like a very minute way, like even if I'm working at a corner store or something, I would still want to be self-sufficient and not have to be emotionally tethered by other people, because you can't change other people. People are fixed. They're not going to change for you. They're going to change because there's like a material incentive for them to change. They're not going to change for you. People are so dogmatic and stuck up about that they would rather they'll give emotional responses to real problems. They're not going to risk being cold to seriously answer something. And that just troubled me, because I even saw some of that within myself. So I worked really hard to pluck that out of myself, and it made me like a skittish freak, pathological liar. It made me like a deceptive and mean person, where my friends, if they needed advice from me or something, I would give them extremely paranoid, bad, counterintuitive advice that did not help them. I was very prejudiced, and I would be mean to people for even having like the slightest converging interests from me, because I thought that there was something like bad about like what they enjoyed. Only recently have I been able to not be like that, because I've been like that for the longest time. I've been so judgmental towards people, and only recently, within the last like 2 or so years, have I seen the value in not trying to uncover everything and not be skeptical of literally everything, and to just like see things for what they are and accept them, which, I mean, you shouldn't do too much, but you shouldn't be an idiot. A lot of this, I know why I am this way now, and it's partially it's because I had it explained to me, because I had a lack of mentorship in my life, and I was able to be led astray to just overanalyze everything, and to take initiative of that for myself, to seize at opportunities for myself, and to operate in a super selfish survival mode kind of way. I had a unique point to where I could absorb a lot of information without having to be tested for it, and the knowledge that I had as a kid, it was something that I wasn't ready for. And even though even knowledge is like a stretch, it was just info, and it was info that I couldn't properly process, and it made me excessive. It worsened my impulsivity. It wasn't just me, but it's everybody in this generation. Well, a lot of people in this generation are like this. A lot of people my age are super ironic. They think that they are smarter than their parents. I think a lot of people my age, a lot of people from really the ages of like 15 to 16 to like 20, 26, you know, that 27, that whole like age bracket of people is really, they think that they're smarter than their parents, and it's because their parents failed them. Their parents failed to mentor them. Our society lacks elders. There is something so dangerous about knowing about something before you're able to use it or see the value in it, and you decide what the value is with the information that you have, because you don't have somebody to guide you, and especially when you don't even have your peers to go off of. You feel disconnected from your peers, and you're kind of able to just wander off and use things at your limited and flawed discretion. It leads to excess and abnormality, and it makes a lot of sense that so many people that are Gen Z and millennial are so mentally ill when their parents maybe suffer from alcoholism, or are angry at their parents, so they broke away from their parents and made really unconventional family structures that can't meet their children's needs, so their children grow up to be disordered, and they can really develop a nasty problem on a whim. The internet, I'm not a Luddite. I'm really the opposite of a Luddite. I love the internet, and I especially I appreciate it now even more than when I was younger, and it was all that I had. When the internet is just a surrogate activity because you've been robbed of so much in your life, you don't know how to you don't know how to age in the same way as other people, because you're kind of othered, and you're not really integrated, and you don't have you're emotionally imbalanced, and you don't have an adult helping you process those feelings. And then you go on the internet and you have all this information at your disposal, and you can just look this stuff up freely without any guidance at all. It will make you really abnormal, because like I said, when you have all this information and you don't even know fully what the value of it is, you decide what the value is. Your priorities are so off. That's everybody. That's why there's so much polarity. Why really extreme unstable personalities are being rewarded instead of humbled and put on a better track. People are almost rewarded now for being just so loopy and crazy. I know I was when I further down the line, when I was just really manic and messaging people really frantic stuff, and I got like schizo posting or whatever. I was never really questioned about it in a serious way. I was kind of allowed to just do that because it was so normal, and people are so desensitized to it that people just kind of saw it as like funny and not a serious problem. When you have information and you don't have the appropriate amount of experience beforehand to have a good intuition on how to use that information, that you can really only have like when you're mentored by somebody, or you're inheriting something from someone else, or you're in a good circle to where like through osmosis you can have that intuition and be able to adapt to this information in a good way. You are opened up to excess. You are opened up to cruelty, unusual fixations, and it will wreck your life. And an obvious example of this, of having knowledge without experience, would be like porn. Okay, a lot of people finding pornography when they are like 9 to 11 years old, like hardcore porn, people's like bodies being exerted unnaturally in these studios, sometimes with multiple people. Like this is the stuff that's in ads, porn ads. They don't even advertise like the normal stuff. They advertise like the most hardcore, overstimulating, unnatural stuff, maybe with like fake female orgasms and stuff like that. It is like, well, what that does to you when you don't have experience, like even talking to girls, even like being romantic beforehand. It is, what it will do to you is insane. You will have like strange paraphilias. You will be emotionally unregulated. You will be You will masturbate a lot, and that'll be the equivalent of like having sex a lot. You're not supposed to have sex a lot. It's the equivalent of having sex a bunch of times. If you're young and you're doing it like multiple times a day, it's literally insane. And it's not like it's not a means to something that's productive. It's not a means for like reproduction. It's literally solely to gratify yourself. Like that's one example that everybody can agree upon. Like if you're brought up in a traditional family, a healthy family, then you are held accountable. You are raised to be responsible, and you're kept busy enough to where you won't want to like watch porn and stuff like that, and you'll be raised to be like well adjusted, and you'll probably be in a better community that can allow you to stay that way. And so when you talk to a girl, you're responsible. I imagine she would be raised responsibly. You wouldn't overstep any boundaries, and you would have the knowledge of things like sex. It would be gradually kind of revealed to you, like even if you knew about it before, in a very like abstract way. You knew what sex was for, and you knew that it was sanctified, and it was this specific thing that existed in this specific context, and it wasn't something to be taken in and of itself. It was part of a bigger process of being with somebody, right? You're raised responsibly. This girl is raised responsibly, and you court her, and then after that you would be intimate with her, and it wouldn't be taken, it wouldn't be understood in a vacuum. It's experientially revealed to you, and you understand it intuitively because you're brought up good, that it's part of something bigger. But when you don't have that, when you're not raised like that, and you just have all this info, you don't understand what sex is a part of. And so you take this one thing, you take it out of its context, you don't understand what the value of it is, and you abuse that in your mind, and it makes you extremely perverted. Justice is besides porn addiction, I think justice, the idea of justice and how to execute justice, is a great example of something where you need experience slash the counsel of an elder to help you navigate that properly. Otherwise, it leads to cruelty. It leads to excess, abnormality.